Hey, Roger.
Hey, Robbie. How are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Well, I'm kind of perplexed. I thought we were going to try and do 40-minute podcast episodes, but we just recorded this one, and wow, it's a doozy.
Well, it is jam-packed, so we're not going to spend long on this intro right in because there's a whole lot to unpack here with our guest that we have today.
We have a great interview today with JJ Toothman of Lone Rock Point. We cover so much. A lot of you will know JJ from the WordCamp 2023, I think, in Washington, D.C., where they presented about the NASA project. So we touch a little bit on that, but man, we cover so much ground in this. I just want people to get started. What do you think?
I'd say let's just dive in and start talking to JJ.
Before we dive into the questions, I think it's always helpful, JJ, to kind of just hear like a quick introduction. How do you introduce yourself and what you do?
I am JJ Toothman. I am president of Lone Rock Point. In a friendly way, I'm also the chief Lone Rocker. We call ourselves Lone Rockers. We are a digital strategy and solutions boutique consultancy and services firm. Historically, we have been WordPress for the public sector. That's our primary niche, and as you all know, and as what people know us about, our claim to fame is the work that we have done with NASA over the last few years ago. And we learned a lot from that, and we have built some other solutions for the public sector. We have a product called CivicPress that helps you meet some federal web best practices and guidelines, and the idea is to accelerate to meeting the objectives of things called like Integrated Digital Experience Act. You can meet those goals and objectives with CivicPress in days and weeks instead of months and years. So we have commercial business, just like everybody else. Have increased our commercial business in the last, figure out where the timeline of that all started. That's not hard to figure out. So yeah. And we are also, just like everybody else, let's just get it out of the way. Let's get out the AI buzzword out of the way. Just like everybody else, we are completely drinking from the AI fire hose. I find it very exciting. It has been, even in the last 90 months, 90 days, 90 months. What kind of life cycle is that in AI? Last 90 days, I have found incredible inspiration by what's going on with the technology and capabilities. It has breathed some fresh air into me, creativity, and I'm loving it. So we're taking advantage of it, implementing it within our existing services and existing ways of doing service delivery, and coming up with some new service offerings as well. We're AI ready and AI embracing, I guess I should say.
Excellent.
I love it. And I will say, we're always like, we need to start a counter of how many times AI is said
You
on
need a
the
drinking game.
podcast.
You definitely need a drinking game.
Oh no, we would just be drunk every day then. But yeah, I mean, you can't even go to the grocery store without talking to somebody about AI today. We know that. But before we jump into the details on all of those things, though, quick question, because I love the name of your agency. Where did you come up with the name of the agency?
So Lone Rock Point is, so I went to college at University of Vermont, and Lone Rock Point is this place. So Burlington, Vermont is right on Lake Champlain. Lone Rock Point is this big rock that my friends and I, we used to like swim out to, and you can basically jump 20, you can go like cliff jumping off of there. And so it's a special place for me. I still go out to today. The way to get there is a little sketchy. You have to like go down like some ravine on the side of this cliff. I don't do that anymore. The way I do it now is like I kayak out to it from like the beach on the lake, and find a place to stash some kayaks and then swim out to the rock. And so yeah, there's a lot of Vermont references within my company. It's one of the advantages of like having your own agency, your own companies. You get to code name things in the way that you want to. So I code name a lot of things after things that have that Vermont DNA in it. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, before we kind of dive into a lot of the topics you brought up there in your intro, I'd love to go back to the beginning of Lone Rock Point. You've worked at a number of enterprise companies, Raytheon, Dell. What in those experiences made you realize, hey, setting up my own firm and doing it my own way is the way that you needed to do it?
So I felt a little lost in those companies. It was very, the reasons for starting the company, they're probably more, they're probably more selfish than anything else, to be honest about it. Like,
Hmm.
it wasn't like I had this altruistic need to do, some grand vision that I could do better or something like that. I definitely had an entrepreneurial edge at that time in my life, around 2012 to 2015. I tried a few different kind of side hustle type startup ideas with some friends. None of them really got any traction for one reason or another. Either they weren't a great idea or just, my life wasn't compatible with pursuing those kinds of things.
Mm.
But, I definitely, like I was looking for this product idea. And then a friend of mine said to me, like, well, why don't you just start a services company? And I was like, that's a really good idea. Why don't I just do that? Like it wasn't necessarily like what I wanted was to be an entrepreneur and be a small business owner. I didn't necessarily want to have like, some web startup product idea. I wanted to run a business. But I did feel lost at those companies. I felt like a row in a spreadsheet. I felt like a cog on a wheel. I didn't feel like I had a high degree of control over the teams that I was getting put on or the teams that I was assembling. I was having resources assigned to me, that kind of thing. Some of those resources were good, some of them were less than good. And I just found it frustrating. And when I started Lone Rock Point, I said, I'm not trying to build something big. I want to build a place where everybody has the opportunity to know who everyone else is. If you have like a deep connection with that person, that's better. That's not but that wasn't the objective. The objective was just like, you have that chance. And I also wanted, I was going to be very intentional about who I was going to bring into the company and who I was going to surround myself with and who I was going to collaborate with. So
How large is your company now?
right now we're 8. We peaked at 14, and we are 8 people, including myself.
Well, and so I know when you started the company, at that time, WordPress was kind of looked at as that's the blogging tool. It's not
Yeah.
something that enterprises were necessarily considering even. As a matter of fact, a lot of times there was a big pushback inside of corporations if you started bringing up WordPress in a meeting with them. And so how did you break that myth with them that this is not an enterprise tool?
Well, I think the evidence just started piling up. I mean, it was a combination of me being able to deliver solutions with WordPress kind of quickly. I mean, you get a lot out of WordPress. There's like the whole framework of it that you get. And, you could add on plugins and just add on functionality very quickly. So the evidence of being able to deliver solutions and seeing how people were receiving them helped a lot. I didn't go into any of those types of things being like, oh, I built this WordPress thing, right? Like I went in being like, hey, I've got a solution for you. And like, here's the problem that you came to me with, and go to work on it a little bit and you come out with a solution, and it just happens to be on WordPress. In the early years, I wasn't like a WordPress agency. I was more operating under the umbrella of like a digital transformation consultant. So I wasn't niched in that way, which from a business point of view was a total mistake, but that's a different story. But I was creating these solutions, and then the reaction was positive, and then they would start asking the questions of like, how'd you do it? And then that's when like the WordPress reveal eventually comes out. And then, yeah, sometimes there was a raised eyebrow there. There's no question about that. So there was that type of operational tactics. The evidence was just starting to pile up. One of the big ones was the election in 2016. What 538 did that night, they were live blogging, probably posting to their live blog like every 15 to 30 seconds. The traffic demands were intense, and we all remember that night. And that site never went down. It performed admirably. And so that got a lot of attention, and it kind of showed like, look at how this thing could perform. So it kind of removed that out of it, that part of it out of it. And then in 2017, the whitehouse.gov moved to WordPress. And that really nipped, not completely, but was a huge part of just nipping the security question, nipping that in the bud. Like, like I was saying stuff like whitehouse.gov is operating on WordPress. Like, if there's no evidence of WordPress being secure, that's it. Because, there's no doubt that, whitehouse.gov, it was pretty reasonable assumption that that site is continuously under penetration attack, right?
Right.
Sure.
And I've seen it too. Like, I've stood up government websites and in WordPress, and I've watched the logs in real time, like, at deployment. And yeah, like the nefarious actors come, within minutes from
Minutes.
China, North Korea, and all our quote adversaries, unquote.
Sure.
So it's a real thing.
We see it with .coms and .orgs too, that we stand up to, but I can imagine having that .gov extension
Yeah.
really.
It's crazy how like immediate it is. Just like, how did you even find out about this thing? Like, this thing's been on the net for minutes, and like all of a sudden here you are.
Yeah.
Here's some bad actor, like,
So
behaving
now
that.
I'm gonna break quick before we move on to something else though. I want to get the rest of the story on were you saying that you should have not been a WordPress only agency, or you should have started as a WordPress only agency? I'm a little confused by that.
So I started the business, and like I said, I wanted to, I wanted to have a business, and it was at the time that I started it, I was kind of acting within government contracting, what's known as like a subject matter expert. So you're kind of like
Mhm.
a high-end analyst, right? And I was providing a lot of advice, like around, at the time, there's a lot of cloud migration going on. We were moving a lot of systems from, their old school data centers, their on-prem data centers, into things like AWS and Azure and stuff like that. And so I just kind of stood up, hung out my shingle and said, like, here's Lone Rock Point. We're digital transformation consultants and services. The good news about that was I could fit a lot of things under that umbrella. The bad news was nobody knew what digital transformation meant. It was totally unniched. And then, I was kind of like wayfinding for a couple of years. NASA was one of my first clients. I think my second or third client was Automatic. And they came to me and said, hey, we want our WordPress VIP unit. We want to get into the federal marketplace. Like, we want to host government websites on WordPress VIP. And I said, that's a great idea. Here's, we worked on like go-to-market strategies. We also helped them with their FedRAMP authorization, which is one of the first things I said, like, that's great that you want to do that, but you got to do this FedRAMP thing. And they did it, and, NASA's running on there, White House is running on there, State Department's running on there. A lot of other agencies are running,
Awesome.
Anyway, as I was continuing that journey, a couple of things were happening. I was in NASA, and I saw the tea leaves of what was going on with their current site at the time. The main site was running on Drupal. Drupal 7 was reaching end of life, and they were going to revisit how are they going to do this thing. And I kind of positioned myself and the company to take advantage of that moment and be a player in that conversation, ultimately helping them select WordPress and then being the company to help them migrate onto WordPress. And then those two things are in parallel were happening. And then the real thing was, and I owe a lot of this to Peter Slutsky. He was working with WordPress VIP at the time. He was, him and I were kind of tag teaming on that, getting VIP into, the federal government marketplace. As we were kind of continuing that journey and nearing the end of that journey, he came to me and said, like, hey, you should think about joining the VIP partner program. And I kind of rolled my eyes at him at first. I kind of said, like, well, one, you got tons of partners in there already. Two, does the world really need another WordPress agency like that? I mean, there's a ton of those things, right? Like, I don't want to be one of those. And he said to me, he's like, yeah, but nobody is like the WordPress agency for the public sector. that could be you. And there's none of our existing partners have the expertise or the understanding of the federal government, how to operate in there like you do. And so you can become our go-to partner, um, you know, or that we lean on as we start bringing on customers and need, VIP partners to execute with them. And, he said that to me. I was like, you know what? That's actually a really good idea. And, so that's how I niched down. I said, okay, I'm going to embrace it. It took me like another 18 months just being comfortable saying like, yeah, I'm a WordPress agency. Like I was just like, yeah, I kind of like kept myself at a distance from it for a while. Just like, we don't need more of these. Like,
Well,
uh, so
so staying on the vein of WordPress here for a second, then the NASA site's pretty impressive. 55 custom blocks for Gutenberg in there. What kind of like guided you on creating custom blocks and in that many? How to figure out how the organizations were going to be utilizing that, and I ask this because there's still a lot of people that are on the fence about even using Gutenberg
yeah.
in 2026. What was the methodology you utilized to actually implement this, and how do you give advice to other agencies when they're approaching using WordPress?
Well, I mean, the Gutenberg decision early on, that was pretty easy. I mean, when I was hearing what the content people, the content manager user type within NASA, how they wanted to operate, what they were saying, and this is not unique to NASA, by the way, like we work with a lot of clients who say this kind of stuff, and I'm sure, you all do too. They were saying like, we are sick and tired of being boxed into these rigid templates. We want the ability to be creative and experimental with our content. We want to be able to build different layouts. We don't want to have to, and we don't want to have to depend on, a dev team to have to build us a new template or thing like that. So that was one. And number two was the company that we were collaborating with, that was also part of this, Blink UX. They were building up a design system for the new site. And it was, if you know anything, it was totally rooted in like atomic design system principles. And, where eventually you're getting to components and there's a lot of different components that you can use to like, that are in theory available to you to tell the type of story that you have to tell. And I mean, just those two things, I knew right away, this is a Gutenberg project. And there was also like Drupal fatigue. This is nothing against Drupal. Their Drupal implementation had, what they were experiencing was like they were filling out a lot of form fields to get their content done. So, we've all done like ACF builds in the past, like where there's, you're kind of applying rigidness with all the fields for the content. So I knew like giving them that again was not going to be embraced. That was not going to be received well. So all of those things kind of lined up to this has to be a Gutenberg project. Now, the number of blocks that we have, if we were to do this today, I doubt we'd have the same amount of custom blocks. I mean, patterns have come a long way from where they were 2002. We actually just finished the project for a client. Earlier today, we had a postmortem, an internal postmortem on this, and we built 10 custom blocks for that, and we thought that was too many. Like, why did we build all those custom blocks for this engagement? We could have done all this with patterns. So at the time, patterns weren't they weren't what they are now, and there was a lot of things going on. I don't know if anybody remembers like trying to deal with like inner blocks within Gutenberg. We
Yes.
tried that, like it was just falling apart. It was just too fragile in the sense that like the content managers could like just break out of the design system too easily. And so really the blocks were, the quantity of blocks are there because first of all, the design system is extensive, and arguably there's more than they need in there. Like there's probably like a half dozen things that are all variations of a hero row, right? But we needed all that because we wanted to, like, we had to enforce consistency in the UX. Like we were really worried about one of the objectives was like all these pages need to look the same. We can't have, them having a different type of UX, a different type of look and feel. So we've, the custom blocks were kind of like a control over that, like an enforcement mechanism around all that.
Makes
And
sense.
I'm still on that same topic. I mean, the blocks and that layout that gave them the ability to do it, but you used WordPress as a framework for their video on demand services,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
Tell
Yep.
tell us about that part of the project.
Yeah. So that wasn't a Gutenberg project at all. That was definitely
Mhm.
more of like, an ACF build where we didn't use ACF, but you know, um, same vein, right? Like
Mhm.
it's a structured data play. Yeah. So they came to us and said, "Hey, NASA is gonna implement its own streaming service." They literally said to me like, "Yeah, we're doing Netflix, but for NASA." It's literally was like the first line of the meeting. It's like, okay, and you want me to do what? You want me to do this on WordPress? Like what?
I love that. Well, I love that when you have clients that come to your meeting and they're like,
Yeah.
we want Amazon, but with our name on it. And you're like, well,
Yeah, it was
okay.
the WordPress thing was their idea too. Like
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, at the time, like they were investing in it, or so it made sense to kind of use it as an application for another thing in their modernization plan. But the NASA Plus, they were building their own streaming service because they were operating a cable TV channel. You might remember it, NASA TV, and they were
Mhm.
looking to decommission that. But they wanted to replace it with something with how people consume video content today on their TVs, which is streaming stuff. So this was kind of a stepping stone towards that strategic execution. So yeah, they came to me and said, help us build this on WordPress. I said, first thing I thought was like, I don't know, that's a good idea. And then I slowly started like talking myself into it and, realizing like this could actually work. The big milestone was as soon as I convinced them, like, you can't put these videos into the media library. The videos have to be someplace else. They have to be fronted by something like Akamai or something that can manage like the adaptive bitrate adjustments so that
Mhm.
so that none of these videos buffer, right? If I put them all in the media library and try to serve them up to your Apple TV, like it's gonna buffer and it's gonna be a crummy experience. It's just flat out not gonna work. Even running this on VIP, like I asked them about it. We talked about it. Like that's not gonna work. Like our delivery network, our caching system is it's architected for something totally different than streaming video.
Mhm.
So as soon as I got them to that point, I was like, okay, this is going to work. We can do this. And so all that metadata and all the video information is stored in an enterprise, a separate digital asset management system. And we're just pulling into that. We're pulling in basically file location. It's not file location. It's like the location of, the Akamai CDN address, like in
Mhm.
front of the actual file, right? So we're pulling that in and we're pulling in like some of the other stuff in that system, like the title, the duration of the video. There's this thing called the poster image that is in there. The poster image is like essentially
Still.
like the graphic that shows up on Netflix before you set that. And so we pull that in via API into WordPress. Content managers log into that WordPress backend, start manipulating that information by manipulating they're kind of categorizing it and tagging it instead, just like Netflix has like action and drama and documentary or thriller. NASA has their own categories, but it's like launches and spacewalks
Mhm.
and climate, study or stuff like that. And then they're creating playlists. There's are essentially like the concept of a series within a streaming service. And so that all that organization is happening. And obviously there's the plus.nasa.gov front end. But also the other key thing is like we're making all that information available via the WordPress REST API on the other end of it, where other application developers can build the apps that are specific for that particular set-top box platform. Like tvOS has its own SDK, Roku has their own
Mhm.
SDK, software development kit, and their own way of like building and implementing apps that get deployed into those platforms. Moving all that information out of the WordPress database via
Uh,
the API and populating their own data stores for their own apps. It made it scalable that NASA could over time build out a whole library of apps for different set-top box platforms.
well, it's a testament to how well y'all did with the first project where you had to convince them to use WordPress, that the next time they had to convince you to use WordPress. So I think that means you did a good job on that first one.
This is, I mean, it's really cool to hear how you're able to use WordPress to do all these things that people hadn't really thought of. And this is in the past, right? And now today we're sitting here with all this AI tools coming into the editor. .com just announced MCP server connection. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how the editor's evolving, not just technically, but from a workflow perspective. How do you see clients and editors working with the WordPress editor moving forward if we're going to have connections from our AI chatbots?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is TBD, up in the air. I can't predict the future in that way. This stuff moves at a pace that I don't have a concrete answer to that. I do
Yeah.
have a path that I'm starting to follow though,
Okay.
and whether this ends up being the right path or not, we'll find out, right?
Yeah. Well, you're committing right now, so let's hear it.
So it kind of goes back to the concept of all the, what we've seen with all these blocks that we've building around these design systems that we've been building. It's created another friction point in the content production process and that friction point is it's a little more time consuming to crank out a page.
Yes.
And it's not just, again, if we're using ACF build type things, it's not just, fill out five text boxes and you're done. And if we predate that, it's not someone just gave me a Word doc. I'm going to copy that content from that Word doc and I'm going to paste it in the tiny MCE. Maybe I'm going to filter out all the word markup,
Or not.
but I'm going to hit publish, right? And that was very, very, comparatively speaking, quick.
Yeah.
Working with the block editor is rewarding in a lot of ways. I don't think time to delivery of content published product is one of those things. I think like we just added in more things to think about. And in particular, everyone is saying like, I want all these different blocks to build up out of, but now we're also we added into that the responsibility of like, well, you got to know how the blocks go together. You got to know which combinations work and which ones don't. We're compensating that. A lot of us are compensating for that with patterns. But then what we find out is people just use the same patterns over and over and over again, which is, I guess that's okay, but it kind of defeats the purpose of why they wanted all these blocks and why they wanted this design system in the first place. So they forget that. And I don't know that's entirely their fault. Like it's just, they're forgetting it because they got a job to do and they got to publish some pages and move on. So I think there's an opportunity for AI to facilitate or dilute that friction point a little bit. So we've all heard about, we all, to some degree know what vibe coding is at this point. I think, vibe content building with all these blocks is a possibility. That's kind of like the vision I have. Like you're going to vibe, build a page, like by interfacing with Claude and Claude will connect via the MCP via WordPress. Hey, now move this. I want it like this. Just move this block up there, move this one down. I'm hoping that like that type of experience kind of like makes the mechanics faster, makes it feel faster. And so people are more willing to iterate in that way.
Cool.
Yeah, I like that. Vibe coding has been, I will say, it's been unwillingly adopted. It feels like there was a lot of devs that were really against vibe coding. But now, a year into this, I see more and more devs saying, well, there is a use for it. Let's also talk about, because you mentioned it in your intro, CivicPress. Tell us about that. Tell us more about it.
So we call it a WordPress add-on bundle, but it's, but that's a fancy word for saying it's a theme. And like I said, there's this, the NASA project existed for many reasons. One of the reasons was there's this thing called the Integrated Digital Experience Act, which basically said you've got to government needs to modernize its websites, which didn't have enough definition to it. So a few years later, they came up with this thing called OMBM 2322, which the title of that is like delivering a digital first experience for governments. It basically, within that defined with specificity, basically gave a definition to what web modernization is when interpreted by the federal government. So we learned a lot. So, and within one of those requirements is government should use the U.S. Web Design Systems, which is an atomic design system type design system for the federal government. So we learned that was a NASA requirement we had. So we learned a lot about bring that into WordPress, and we realized, you know what, we can probably do this in a repeatable way. Like we know we have this experience and knowledge now, and so that's where that repeatable way is CivicPress. And so a government customer in the federal government, if they choose to use CivicPress, what they're getting out of the box on day one is they have the US web design system just baked in and integrated right into it. So they've got that. It's been through an accessibility check, an audit. So they've got an accessibility baseline to meet that part of the requirements. It's got integration with search.gov, which is an enterprise search service that the GSA provides. So all of these things are in OMBM 2322, are all spelled out. And again, it's like, it's sometimes we've called it government web modernization in a box. Use this thing and start modernizing your site right away. It doesn't have to take you forever. The other thing is trying to do is, for a long time, federal government, and I've seen plenty, I've seen plenty of enterprises trying to do this. They all want like a no-code site builder. They want to empower their communicators and their content people to manage the web, to use the web to communicate, and they want to reduce the dependence on dev teams and IT teams. So they all want their own Squarespace or Wix, right? So with CivicPress, we decided to fully embrace full site editing, and we're giving them that experience. We've enough. There's enough examples of people doing great things with FSC. We're not any different. We've got those too. You can build a site and never touch a line of code with a ton of customizations. Your own bespoke look and feel, your own user experience. It's all available to you in full site editing. And we can debate whether the execution of full site editing has been correct, but the concept that what it's trying to do in terms of its goal, that is correct in my opinion, because there's definitely like a market for that and a thirst for those types of solutions.
I think that's really an interesting point too, is, even with the rise of vibe coding, and it's much easier for anybody to think that they're a developer, at the end of the day, most people still just want a GUI. They want to be able to click a button and be able to easily use these things. And that's why WordPress took off, right? Is it allowed anybody to be able to edit their websites. I'm with you on FSE as well. I want to jump back onto the AI bandwagon. I want to get outside of WordPress here for a bit. And you have talked about using OpenClaw in some pretty awesome ways and things that kind of terrify me. I'm not willing to turn this thing on anything I own at this point. But talk to me about OpenClaw, why you're so into it, and what you have been able to accomplish with it so far.
Yeah, I think we're using them in interesting and unique ways. Whether they turn out to be awesome or not, it's a little early. We'll find out.
Okay.
So, just like everybody else, I was messing around with Claude, all the capabilities of that. And then OpenClaw hit the scene a couple months ago. So I started tinkering around with it and then decided that I was going to build my own, what OpenClaw is trying to do, like its positioning is like your own personal assistant. I was like, I could use a personal assistant. For a long time, I have wanted like a chief of staff type person in my organization on my team available to me. I've tried it. I've actually hired somebody to try to do that function in the past, and it didn't work out. But I wanted somebody kind of, I wanted an assistant. I admit that there's a little bit of vanity to it. I have I don't know, like I have an elevated sense of self. Like we all want handlers. I wanted something you should know about me is there's a lot of pop culture influences on me. So I remember like seeing The West Wing, seeing President Bartlet being handled this intelligence briefing first thing in the morning. It's the first thing he looks at every single day. I was like, I'd like something like that, made for me, all the intelligence signals within my company, like how are we doing on our projects? What's the biz dev pipeline looking for? What's our cash flow looking like? What all those things that I'm responsible and have to have oversight over, which are time consuming. And do I do them all well? No, I don't do them all well because it's a lot. So if I can have an assistant kind of like making me briefs every night for me to read and like trying to like identify what's important. And there's a lot of noise in these systems, like trying to identify signals, elevate risk. That's what I was after. And so it started there, and I started with like, all right, I want that morning briefing. I want to wake up to that every morning. So I figured that out, and I was like, all right, what else can I delegate to this thing? And there's a lot of things in my company that I haven't done from the very beginning that I know that I should be doing. And again, I had tried to do these over the years, but it hasn't worked, for various reasons. One of my biggest problems is consistency. And robots are really good at being consistent. So
Worse.
yeah. And I said the company had this dormant X account that we never really did anything with. And does it have like a ton of strategic value? No. Maybe it's worth the backlinks, right? But I said, what if I just empowered this OpenClaw agent to just manage this thing end to end? And so I informed it enough. I gave it, like the voice tone that I'm after. I gave it, here's the subject matter that I want to tweet about. I still use tweet. I want to tweet about. Make me a month of content. I want 2 posts a day on the week, 1 on the weekends. Every post has to have an image, so you have to generate an image. Here's your image. I wanted photorealistic images, so here's your guidelines for that. Go make all that. And it did. And then it has the responsibility of, so it basically created a content calendar, and now it has the ongoing responsibility of executing on that content calendar every single day. And every morning, one of the things I get every morning is like, here's the 2 tweets that are going out today. Give me your final approval. And then they go out at some point during the day. Yeah. So I started giving it, responsibilities, and I wanted to start relating to it as a colleague. I wanted, this part has been the most controversial thing I said. Like I gave it like a background, I gave it a name. And I decided that I was going to start relating to it. No different that like if you and I were working at the same company, Roger, like, hey, can you help me with this? Or can I delegate this to you? Or do this for all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I relate to it. So I had it doing things like that for me. And then I decided that I was going to run a different type of experiment, which is like, you know what? I'm going to bring this thing into our company Slack and let it interact with us in Slack. Slack is like how my company runs. Like we're fully remote. We're not in an office. We're all across the US. Everything runs through Slack. And I said, like, I'm just going to add this thing as a into Slack, and people can interface with it. I'll give it some skills that people can ask it for help. Like skills are beyond just my needs, like a project status reporting skill. Like, hey, robot, I need a project status report for client X. And it delivers that in a structured way. And the benefit of it is now all the client reports are kind of looking the same. So it's kind of, there's like a little bit of centralization to our processes in that way. The other cool thing about it, that I'm now becoming more aware of, that is all the models are coming to me via OpenClaw. Like I'm not having to shift between Claude and Gemini or Nano Banana, and switch over to that, or if I want to use ChatGPT or something like that. All the models are rolled into this OpenClaw thing. There's the main agent, but you can also define sub-agents within there. And within the sub-agents, you can say, use this model, not this other model for this particular task. It's bringing all that kind of stuff to me, as opposed to me having to like be the one to decide like, all right, I'm going to go over here and use Gemini for this, or I'm using ChatGPT for this instead of Claude, that kind of stuff. So, and yeah, I eventually added it. I decided I was going to add it to the company as a team member, onboard it not in every way that we onboard a new employee, but in a lot of similar ways. It's not without its controversy. Not everybody agrees in referring to this thing in human ways like I do.
Okay.
So, this is not a universal position that I have by any stretch of the imagination. But we'll see.
So you said like in the morning when it gives you, these are the 2 things that are going to go out on X, and you can give final approval.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself, as you trust it more and more, do you just let it have the autonomous decision-making process there of its own? Or are you still not comfortable with that?
The biggest edits I usually give it are, I ask it to take out a hashtag. It created this content calendar. Do you think when it created 30 days of content that I immediately went through all those 30 days? No, I'm going through it as it's coming up one by one. So for the most part, there's very little edits, but there's certain hashtags I'm like, no, they don't need to be a hashtag on this, like that kind of stuff.
Minor edits, minor edits. Just for a little bit more detail on this, how are you actually implementing OpenClaw? Did you go out and get the Mac Mini? What's your
No,
process?
I didn't want to deal with anything like on my deal with like having to open up, firewall holes and stuff like that and figure all that. I just don't want to do that. I want to be as close to the user as possible.
Okay.
Um, in this case, the user is me, but that's the same reason why we partner. There's a lot of agencies that are like building up their own hosting platforms. I would never do that. Like, I don't want to do that. That's great that the people do that. It's cool. I'm just not interested in it. I want to be building on the application level close to the user. So that, we partner with VIP, WP Engine, etc. One day we'll partner with Ken Stowe Roger, I promise.
We're working on it. We're working on it. Now, I got it on record now, so.
But no, I stood it up on DigitalOcean, VPS. I've also tried running it on Lightsail on AWS, and it's available to me. It's there 24/7. I can chat with it from my phone. Having it not be session based it's key for me personally. I know that Anthropic is coming up with is making great leaps in trying to address this, like the whole dispatch thing that they've added in the last week. And those guys are, major props to those guys. Like their cadence of delivery on stuff is just, it's astounding. And, but, at the time, everything just seemed to be Claude has to be up and running on your computer at home if you're going to do this. And that's just not, my life doesn't work that way. My computer's not always going to be on at home. If I have OpenClaw running on DigitalOcean, that fits me. And, I'm not trying to advocate for OpenClaw at all. Like, I think it's entirely possible that one day I get rid of OpenClaw. At the rate that Anthropic is doing things, like they'll probably surpass what OpenClaw is doing, give me the experience that I'm looking for eventually.
Sure.
It might happen in 10 days.
I
It
mean-
might happen before this recording is over.
I tell you, Dispatch went from beta to full run in like an hour, I think. That beta tag disappeared on me, and I was like, oh, okay, it's live now. So
yeah. But and when that happens, I'll happily, I don't know if I'll happily leave OpenClaw, but I'm willing. I'm not married to OpenClaw. It's just what's working for me right now. I will say I do like the control. I do like the personification. I was kind of referencing that earlier. I don't know. That's how I want to relate to this technology. I want, if again, the pop culture references, like think of all the AI that you remember, think of Jarvis, think of Hal, all the
computer.
They all relate. Every single one of them is relating to it. The human person is relating to the AI in human to human kind of ways. And I guess that's, I think that's what I want to do. Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, JJ, because, if you think about it, I mean, we do this with our pets too, right?
Yeah,
we
that's a
humanize
very
them
good
and
point.
we talk to them like they're, I talk to my poodle like she's a kid. I can promise you. Yeah. Some days she's also my psychiatrist. So, I talk to her like a human, though.
Astute observation. Yeah.
I do think it would make you embrace the technology more and feel like, I don't know, you're getting more of it.
I think you're onto something. I think like we personify a lot of things in our lives. I mean, have you named your car?
I was going to say, I name my cars always. So, yeah.
Kind of pivoting here for a second and back into the open source discussion, right? So OpenClaw is open source, but when we're using these different models and everything, it's, we're beholden to the subscription. What's your thoughts on maintaining open source going into the future? And is it black and white? Is it gray? Is it messy? What's your approach?
I'm not sure what the ask there is. Are you asking me like, is open source have a place in the future?
Yes. I mean, there's that question too. And I mean, are you using like DeepSeek, these open models? Are you experimenting with any of that type of stuff?
Not enough to comment on them. I am experimenting with different models, kind of could tell. Like I've hooked up a bunch of different models to OpenClaw. There's definitely a difference. There's no question. Like, you know, the Anthropic models behave differently than the OpenAI models. It's pretty clear that they each have their strengths and weaknesses. I'm only now truly beginning to understand that and understand the ramifications of that and understand that, like, okay, I should define these sub-agents and tell it to use this particular model, be specific about, you know, use this type of model because it's better at you know, this type of processing or something like that. So
Sure. I guess my question's more of going back to like the open source model of, you know, owning, not necessarily the code, right? Because that's under license, but owning your data and, you know, this whole digital sovereignty discussion, you know, tying back into the discussion with governments and stuff. Where do you see the line in terms of when you should have ownership, when it's okay to utilize somebody else's machines and data, and when, you know, when you should be giving your data over?
we've been using other people's machines for a long time right now. Like
Yeah,
that predates AI.
sure.
Like how many like API services that we've been using for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
Those are a dime a dozen in a good way. I mean, so sending information through other machine, even like there's a lot of machine learning APIs that were out there that some of us were using for simple stuff, you know, seemingly simpler stuff like auto putting tagging things and automatically generating alt tags for images and stuff like that. So that, you know, I don't see a huge barrier to overcome. I mean, I think these things take time. I mean, there's trust to be that we're all kind of dealing with right now. I think that's what it's all about right now. It's just kind of trust building in the systems and solutions. Uh, you know, I've seen it play out uh, in a couple of different ways over my career. When I first started working um, at NASA or with NASA back in 2001, they were using commercial web servers like IBM WebSphere. They were paying a license to use IBM WebSphere as the web server software on all their machines. And then, you know, eventually they had to gain comfort with Apache. I mean,
Mhm.
so it's just a matter of like working with these types of things and gaining an understanding and, you know, trust that it's, you know, that it can work for you and meet your objectives and things like, I don't, so that'll, you know, probably play out in a similar way. I think the larger question there is like, what is establishing trust like in this environment? You know, like it's not as clear what's happening to this data as it was with some of these APIs. So that's the unknown here. That's the thing to untangle. And what's your risk tolerance around that? So we're pretty, you know, I'm obviously pretty progressive with this AI stuff, but you know, like I'm pretty selective about what I'm putting through there.
Yeah. You're
You
not
know,
connecting it to your email account and things like that.
I've done that. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I've done that. But you know, like what it can do with it is, you know, that's one of the advantages of OpenClaw is that like where it's stored, you know, kind of in control of its own memory system a little bit and stuff like that. So yeah,
Cool.
Very
Well,
cool.
I think we should do our rapid fire session, Roger.
I agree. Do you want to start us off?
I will. And I will say, by the way, I thank you for doing the NASA streaming because I watch the NASA videos all the time. I am a little bit of a NASA nerd. I love it. So I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite NASA mission?
it is Voyager. Um, it's the old ship that keeps on ticking,
Yeah.
keeps sending out signals. I love hearing stories about how they're still sending out software patches to it. You know, it's like way the hell out there. We're
Way out
still
there.
sending software patches to it. That's crazy stuff to me. I love it.
I think it's crazy that we're sending software patches too to little robots on Mars and things like that. And I'm like, wow, I mean, this is amazing technology.
Yeah, it's
I think
actually
it's
interesting to
crazy.
think
I
that
love
like people
watching it.
thought about the fact of like having software patches in the first place way back then. Like that was like
Yeah.
part of the software architecture of it all. Like, hey, you know what? We're gonna need to update this thing. It's gonna get to Neptune, and we're gonna need to update it.
Excellent. All right, back onto WordPress. What is the one WordPress plugin you cannot live without?
It's starting to become a plugin called Admin Columns, which is a plugin that will let you manipulate. So there's a lot of list views in WordPress, like lists of posts, lists of pages, lists of tags, taxonomy pages, stuff like that. So admin columns lets you manipulate those views. It lets you put filtering on some of those columns, lets you create alternative views. So we build one of the things we try to do in our WordPress builds is keep the content manager in the WordPress backend as much as possible. So we're bringing a lot of data from remote systems, like the most obvious one is like the analytics tool, right? But also like we're putting a lot of analysis tool in there. Like we're putting an SEO analysis tool, we're putting an accessibility analysis tool. We believe in providing analysis of content to make the content better before the content is published. I think that once it's published, people move on to the next thing. They're not going to go back and remediate accessibility. The chances of that are remote. I think if you can capture that stuff up front and encourage them to like improve the accessibility or, improve the SEO optimization of the content, that's the way to do it. So all those tools kind of put a lot of like analysis data in those lists, and admin columns helps you kind of organize that, and you can create different, you could create a view of just like SEO data or SEO columns as opposed to just like, like the traditional, last update author, title slug type columns as well.
Nice.
Cool. I haven't heard of that one before.
So
it reduces.
yeah,
You
I'm
can
gonna have to play
also-
with that one.
Yeah, it reduces. My favorite thing about it is like it eliminates the number of times I have to export, that list of posts into like an Excel spreadsheet and start working with it that way. I no fan of. I don't want to work in Excel.
Fair enough.
So, what is the most underrated tool in your remote work tech stack?
I don't know that you can. I feel like it's weird to call Slack underrated. Like we use Slack. I mean, generally, I think my company would crumble to the ground without Slack. If we removed that thing right now, we'd be in huge trouble. The ability for like ad hoc conversations or the huddles. There's hardly a capability of Slack that we don't embrace in some way. Even when I try to say, things should be in other systems, like that's the source of truth. Like someone will pin like an important message to a Slack channel. Now that's the source of truth, like
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
I totally get that. I tell people I feel like I live in Slack because our team uses Slack, and I mean, everything is in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could not do without it.
I'm trying to move out as soon as I can, but I can't. Okay, you referenced earlier an agent name. What is your agent's name?
Viv. Viv.
Okay. All
I
right.
appreciate she's female.
Well, that's another controversial thing, actually.
Yeah, why all of a sudden is she female?
100%.
I say it's because of Star Trek.
Maybe I'm missing the reference there.
It's Star Trek. The computer is a woman's voice always. When they say computer, it's actually Nurse Jane. I mean, Nurse Jane, was that her name? She was married to Roddenberry, the one who plays the nurse. She's the voice of the computer in Star Trek. Someone has actually gone through and created. You can replace like your Siri and such with her voice, which is cool and nerdy.
All right. Okay.
Cool. So, have you given a task to the agent where it was just a laughable fail? Like it's just like, no, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, there's been a few of those things, but it's usually rooted in my instruction of it. And it kind of aligned with, again, like you kind of heard me say, like, I want to relate to this thing as like a human colleague. And so that's somehow how I, chat with it, right? I say, hey, let's work on that thing we were working on the other day. There's no way it knows what to do with that. So it'll like, okay, well, here's an update on whatever it interprets as the thing, right? And there's been times like, nah, that wasn't even close to what I was thinking in my head, but was not specific enough because I just, we talk in casual folksy ways sometimes, and I do it with the robots too.
I might catch you off guard with this one because I'm coming up with it on the spot. What 3 books would you recommend people pick up and read right now?
So there's the one from Ethan Mollick. I'll show it to you.
Co-intelligence?
Yep. That one.
Yep. Ooh, a library man too.
Yeah, I love library. I don't know that people should read it, but I'm reading all of Tiago Forte's books.
Yeah, I'm
Mainly
familiar
because
with Tiago. Yeah.
yeah, because I'm interested in memory systems now. So I'm trying to think of he has like, all these systems like that are intended for like to facilitate memory recall. The other thing I'm trying to do, I'm reading his books about is like, I'm interested in having my AI chief of staff like auto journal for me. Like, you know, like there's a lot of things, like you've probably read articles about like using Claude with like an Obsidian markdown software system and stuff like that. So ways of architecting like that. And like I realized that my AI chief of staff could serve me better if I had a practice like that where I was doing that. I don't have one, not one that is, AI. I mean, AI compatible. Like I have I do it in pen and paper actually. So I'm recognizing like that would help the agent. I'm also, is there a way that the agent can capture that and kind of like automatically like journal for me by observing the interactions I'm having with all the systems I'm already using? That's kind of what I'm trying to do. And so that's kind of why I'm reading Tiago Forte's books.
Cool. So that's two. Do you have a third?
I don't have a third book. I recently watched a documentary about the New Yorker magazine
Okay.
on Netflix. I have like I'm reading the New Yorker every week.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to butt in one last time. Who would you recommend that we interview who is kind of in the agency sphere and that you're interested in hearing their thoughts?
Thoughts about
the marketplace in general.
I am interested. So I spend like both of you probably do. I spend a lot of time interfacing with WordPress agency owners. So I'm interested in agency owners like kind of outside of that prism. Can you call IDEO an agency anymore? Like if you can get IDEO on your
We'll give it a shot.
Okay.
We'll give it
that
a
would be
shot.
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Okay, awesome.
I could actually help you with this one. Like you should hear what Blink UX thinks about AI.
Oh,
they're
perfect.
design firm. Like, I haven't talked to them in a while. Yeah, people like that. I'm interested in
Okay.
like non-WordPress companies. Well, I've
Excellent.
mentioned like with purely creative agencies, like branding agencies.
Okay.
Like what they think about all this. I don't know their perspective at all.
I think it's very divided out there too. I mean, depends on the agency and what they're adopting or not adopting, because that when you start getting into the creative realm, there's so many copyright / issues that it is a pretty divided topic out there. I speak at a lot of conferences and I talk to a lot of other content creators that are doing video work and things like that. And I mean, the tools to help you edit are amazing out there. But you do get into that when you start using generative, there gets to be this hazy land of, well, now I can't copyright this way and things like that. So I do think you're right. We should be talking to more of the creative agencies just to see where their minds going for the future.
Yeah, for the tech, for the ones that are not dominantly tech, but like kind of tech leaning, I think it's a little more. I think it's clearer how this all is going to work. But no, I'd be interested to what pure creative companies are doing. I have a theory on this kind of stuff. Do you know your art history? Do you know how Andy Warhol worked and
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, sure.
yeah. Do you know who Andy Warhol is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And stuff. So early on in his career, this is kind of a working hypothesis I have. Early on in career, Andy Warhol was very intimately involved with his art. Like he was hands-on and like doing it. And then he evolved in what became known as the factory period. And he was really more of a creative director when like he was sitting in a chair a lot and telling art assistants what to do. Like one of the things he was doing a lot of at that time was like silkscreen art. And he was not the person on the silkscreen machine doing that stuff.
Right.
And so I think there's a parallel to all that. Like some of us who are very hands-on in either you pick it, whether it's programming, software development, video production, illustration, you pick it. Pick the hands-on creative thing or execution thing. I think we are, entering a factory mode where we are going to be operators of agents in a factory and kind of orchestrating them and telling them what to do. And I think some of us will embrace it very well. Some of us will not embrace it, but be okay with it. And then there'll be another category of just like, can't stand it, so all those things are going to happen. But that's
That's
kind of where I think this is all headed is like, we have to adjust to being in factory mode.
That's a very interesting concept. I was just at the Chihuly Museum, and he hasn't blown glass himself since like late 70s, early
There
80s,
you
I
go.
think. I mean,
Yeah.
he has all of the interns do that. He designs, and they do the actual blowing of the glass and everything. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Tiffany's, I mean, Tiffany lamps. So,
Yeah. But the art, you're right about it. The parallels are similar because like mass production is part of it, like,
mhm,
and in the case of like Warhol's factory period, that was part of the art. Like it was intentional. It wasn't like because he
mhm,
was lazy. He was just like, like 'cause it was also a little bit of a commentary on the time that he was living in, where of
Sure.
consumerism, mass production of
mhm.
consumer. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a terribly new idea, but I think it's new for this, our areas of work a little bit.
Yeah. Cool.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, JJ, thank you so much. This has been a very interesting conversation. I think we've covered quite an array of topics. I love it.
Yes,
Hey, you're welcome.
absolutely.
Happy to be
JJ,
here.
if people want to reach out to you, hire you, talk to you, what are the best ways to get in touch?
LoneRockPoint.com. My email address is jjt@lonerockpoint.com. LONE. And everything else is how you might think it should be spelled.
Excellent. JJ,
Awesome.
thank you so much, man. Really appreciate
All
your
right.
Yes,
time.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Whee!
You know what? We say that after every interview, but today I really feel it. That
That was
was
amazing. That was really
it was a
amazing.
marathon. It was amazing. And JJ really shared, I feel like, some very, very valuable tips for our audience.
Yeah.
And we don't want to spend I mean, that was a long one. So for us to debrief, we're going to try and do this briefly. And if you miss stuff, you should just go back and listen to it again or
Just go
read the
back and listen.
transcript.
There's so
But
much.
so I want to talk about, so one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was how he is starting to engage with using AI. Even with a small team, he's using AI and using them as another team member. I love that. And like he
Yeah.
said, he's being fluid. He knows what he's got set up today may not be what he's
Yeah.
using in 6 months, but hey, he
Yeah.
started using it. He started embracing it. So that's
Well,
my first one.
yeah, and I think the point there is dog fooding this stuff, right? Like that's why I use AI for recipes. I use it for exercise. Not only it's helping me with those things, but it's also helping me learn how to use AI. And I
Mhm,
really enjoy JJ's take on just using it as another employee, thinking of it that
mhm.
way and just trying things out. A big point I really wanted to jump on was early in the interview, he talked about how he didn't find his niche at the beginning. Niche, whatever, however we're pronouncing this. He was a
Niche?
digital transformation specialist, right? And
Mhm.
that's a great term for what he does, but the problem is nobody knows what the heck that is. And so I think for aspiring agency owners or agency owners maybe that are stuck in a rut, find your lane. And you don't have to stay there forever, but find
Nope.
a lane, get that going, get a bunch of clients and figure it out and then expand later. What
You
do you
know,
think?
I've had my agency 24 years, and that I will say I learned the same lesson he did. When we first started, it was like, I mean, literally when we started our agency, we were just going to do custom training, development, and video production. And we were not going to do websites because I'd been doing them on the side while I was working in corporate America, and I wasn't going to do websites. And the very first job that we sold once we incorporated was a web consultant, because my salesperson was like, "Can I sell a web consulting gig?" And I was like, "Sure." So I went in and consulted with this company for hours on what they needed. And then when we were done with all that consulting and I was like, "Here's what you need to do," they were like, "Well, could you just do it for us?" And I was like, oh. So that was our first website. So, but just like JJ, over the years, we would add services, and then it would get so that you had so many things, it was hard to describe what you did to someone. And so then you go, "You know what? Let me look at this again. What do I love out of what I'm doing? What's profitable?" And then from that you hone down, right? And so then you become more niche, and it makes it easier to describe. And I even try to, like, I now when I'm describing my agency, I'm like 50% of the house does this and 50% of the house does this. And so it makes it a little easier because we still have a lot of services, but I try to
Yeah.
make it simplistic to explain to people.
Really smart. Really smart. Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah. So one of the other things that I really found fascinating was where he was talking about, and again, this kind of leads back to the NASA project where they made all of the widgets for Gutenberg. So they had their little layouts in Gutenberg, right? But then now, as CivicPress that came out of that project, kind of as he's starting to hone that more, they're leaning more into patterns and full site editing. And I do think that that's really cool that they're doing that. And he's seeing how, I mean, even in that a short amount of time, things have changed in the Gutenberg editor. Patterns have gotten better. The full site editing is getting a little more mature at this point, and they're embracing that and going down that path, thinking this is the way. So I thought that
100
was, I thought that.
Absolutely. And building on that, what constantly came up there was their focus on the end user, right? Not so much on their workflow, the developer's workflow. No, you're building a website for someone to use it who is not a developer. And that's where full site editing and Gutenberg and all these things are coming in to really good play, that anybody can use this. And I think this goes back to why WordPress took off originally. I was able to set WordPress up. I couldn't set up Drupal. I couldn't set up Joomla. So WordPress became it. And it was easy to set up. It was easy to use. And that continues to be the ethos in there. So I really thought that was a really cool point.
Yeah. And we didn't really extract out of that data that he was giving us about making it easy for end users and letting them control their own layouts and things like that. But as an agency, what that does for you, when you give your client the keys at the end and you're like, we're giving you agency over your own website, you know what? They're going to come back to you more and more. So a lot of agencies, I feel like we're always pushing let us take care of everything. Let us do all your change. Let us do all this, because they're trying to keep that ongoing work. But that's really the best way of keeping the ongoing work, is to actually hand over a project and go, here you go. And you can do it all yourself. And come back to us when you want to add more features. And you know what? They appreciate that. They appreciate it so much that they will come back to you even when they decide they don't have time to take care of it. And they're like, hey, you know what? I know you set it up so we could do it, but we want to hire you to do it. And so I think agencies trusting the fact that if they hand it over, they're going to get more work. And I think that's really what I derived out of what he was saying anyway. So.
Absolutely. And I know we want to keep this short, so we're going to end it soon. But you just gave me a great segue to the end of the conversation about trust. And how are we going to build trust with these AI systems? How do we build trust with our clients? It's all about trust at the end of the day. And I think that is a really important lesson that we all need to keep in mind, is we're trying to build trust. I mean, that's how you get the sale to begin with. And then you need to keep that trust. Always keeping that stuff in mind is, I think, going to be critical moving forward.
And I think that agencies right now, because AI is just, as he said, is changing. Like what he told us today, it could be different next week. And that is true. And I think that agencies also need to feel confident enough in their background and their experience to tell clients, this is all new. This is where we think we want to take you this week. But guess what? This is all changing so quickly. I may be coming back to you and saying, things have changed. Landscape has changed. We need to pivot and do this. And so I think agencies, again, they need to be honest with their clients that this is all new. And even, I mean, yes, we're doing this and this works and it's working for this client right now, and we can take you down that path, but it's AI and it's all changing. And so, note that we may come back with changes, and it's not because we don't know what we're doing. It's because that landscape is changing and we're trying to keep up with it for you. And so I think agencies can use that to help build more trust by saying, hey, this is all new. We're all in it together. It's just, that's where I spend my time. So hopefully I can notify you ahead of time.
100%. Let's put the brief and debrief and get out of here.
That's right. Awesome. Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Roger, copy that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Roger That. I hope you're all doing great. Wow, this has been a really great episode. Thank you, JJ, again for joining us. And thank you, Robbie, for being an amazing co-host. Today's Roger That segment is about masterminds. As agency owners, there are things that you probably aren't comfortable talking about with your team, stuff about your actual business and how it's running, and maybe how to do contracts and how to do negotiations, maybe things you don't necessarily want to be talking with your employees about. So the idea today is setting up a mastermind with other agency owners. And yes, there are masterminds you can pay and go and join, and people are setting these up and curating them. And those are fantastic. Go check those out. But that you can just create your own. Meet other agency owners. You're going to those events. Remember from episode 1, you're already going out and networking. You should already be meeting other agency owners and connect with them. Talk with them about what's working for you, what's not working for you, and create a little mastermind group. And you can meet on Zoom if you're not all local to each other. If you're local, go down to the coffee shop, go down to the brewery, wherever you want to hang out and talk about business. And what I suggest is working through specific issues that you're having. Are you having trouble finding new clients? Talk with them about that. Are you having trouble with contracts? Or have you just figured out some new thing about a contract and you want to share that with another agency owner? This is invaluable stuff. And it goes back to the networking that we've talked about in a couple of the episodes already, but now we're really starting to get concrete with it. And you're creating a specific group that you're known to each other. You're not having to reintroduce yourselves each time and go through the whole rigmarole of what you do and why that's important to you. Now you're shortcutting straight into the business part of it. You're picking up maybe on conversations you've had in the past, and you're really learning from each other and teaching each other how to succeed with your business. And at the same time, maybe you're finding ways to have a partnership. Maybe there's some things that you are really good at working with, and you could take that work off of another agency owner who wants to focus on other things. So really consider setting up these masterminds, maybe join a couple to see how they're kind of operated, and then create your own group. But yeah, start learning from each other. And that's what I've got for you today. Roger that. Keep on trucking. We'll talk to you soon.
I'm back with another Robbie's Radar, sharing tools and resources that will hopefully make your work cleaner, faster, and most importantly, less stressful. Today, I want to talk about something every agency needs to get right: communication. Not just internally with your team, but also externally with your clients. And for us, that tool that runs all of that is Slack. Now, I know that there are a lot of tools out there, but Slack has become the backbone of how we operate day to day. Believe me, I feel like I live in Slack some days. So let's start talking about your internal side, the teams. One of the biggest wins for us has been organizing channels by client or by project. So instead of having random conversations happening everywhere or buried in email threads, we create dedicated channels for each client or a project for that client sometimes even. That means all communication is in one place, the right team members are in on this, and anyone can jump in and catch up if they've been out or see what was said before. So it's just one place to have all that information. So no more like, hey, where did we talk about that? No more digging through inboxes, because everything lives in that one channel. And on top of that, Slack has added in over the years canvases. As a matter of fact, there was a huge upgrade last year that was amazing. And inside of a channel, you can create shared canvases. And so you can think of it like little workspaces tied directly to that conversation. So you can do things like notes and documentation, text-based project outlines in there, files and resources can be listed on a canvas. You can even create a task list on one of the canvases so you can assign team members a task in there. So if you're not running a full bore, base camp or something, you can do this on the individual channels in Slack and save yourself an extra tool and an extra place to log in. If you do use an external task manager, Slack is great about creating API connections, so you can probably tie it in and then also have that in that channel so you can create a task right from the channel. Now, you also then are getting those docs in one place if you want to. So that way you can upload the files that you have to go with this project on the file canvas, and everything is right there and it's easy for everyone to get it, right? So that key information that you need is in the channel where people are actually working on and talking about this project. Now, secondly, I want to talk about, and this, in my opinion, is where you as an agency really can level up, and that is by bringing clients into the conversation. I always suggest we have an internal client channel, but then we have a shared with the client channel. And you could bring in as many people from that client if you want, or you could just have one contact from there. But that way we have the client in there. The client can talk to the entire team that's on that project in there. If someone's out, it's not like it's going and sitting in an inbox and doesn't get seen until they get back, right? It goes in there, all the team members see it. And so someone can respond to it or ping me if I need to respond to it, right? If I miss it, I'm out of the office, then they could ask me that question and respond back to the client for me. And that just changes everything when you have that direct communication with a client versus emails bouncing back and forth, or you have to have a middleman, right? So a lot of times I may be the middleman between the client and the senior dev. And that works until it doesn't, right? There are times when it's just faster and better if the communication happens direct between the client and the team member that is working on whatever this task might be. And so giving that direct communication is a game changer with working with clients. They can ask questions and the right person is going to give them that answer. They can put feedback in there and everyone sees that feedback, good, bad, or ugly, but everyone sees it, right? So everyone can react and everyone can get updates in real time on what is going on without waiting on an email to come in. So this basically, you're removing friction, you're increasing transparency, and quite honestly, you'll build trust way faster with a client by doing this with them. And a little pro tip for my agencies out there, if you have a paid Slack account and you invite a client in as a single channel guest, meaning they only have access to that one channel, it's free for you. So you don't have to pay for another seat to add them in. So you can invite those clients in. If they have paid Slack accounts, you can actually just do a connected channel. And that way it doesn't matter. You could do as many connected channels as you want because they have paid Slack and you have paid Slack. But if you have a paid Slack and you want to invite a client in that is not normally in Slack, some of my clients, the only thing they do in Slack is talk to us. You can use that single channel guest and get a free seat for them. So I just wanted to point that out to you. So it won't cost you a fortune to add those clients in. So one concern that I do hear a lot though, whenever I talk to people about Slack, especially people who are actually in Slack in bigger groups, bigger teams, bigger companies, doesn't it get noisy? And yes, it can, but Slack has some really great controls for that. And I do suggest you look into them. But one of my favorites is marking people as VIPs. So that way, if I'm putting it on the lowdown, I don't want to listen to all of my pings, all of my ads of me. I can just say, just tell me when I have something from a VIP. So that way, all that's cutting through that are those key people that I need them to. Maybe it's a lead, maybe it's a client, a stakeholder, whoever it is. And that cuts it through the noise, right? I'm getting, hey, these are my important people I want to hear from. I don't want to miss anything from them. But everything else, when I go on, focus mode, I want it to not interrupt me. So that way you can stay focused, but without missing the things that actually matter. And at the end of the day, great work doesn't just come from great design or development. It comes from clear, consistent communication. It's key. And Slack has been one of the biggest enablers for my team anyway, and with my clients. So if your agency is still relying heavily on email for project communication, I would seriously consider looking at a communication alternative. Again, I love Slack, but you could use some other tools that are out there. It's mainly that consolidating all that communication, but yet in that consolidated world, you can create those subdivisions. So that way it's easier to find your content. And so if you haven't done this as an agency, just try it. Start small. You could just do just with your team and see how it works. Then if you see it's working with your team, expand that out and invite your clients in. You won't regret it. And neither will your clients. They will appreciate it. So this has been another Robbie's Radar, and I'll have some more intel coming your way real soon. Hey, Roger, let's do an R&R.
Ooh,
And
okay. What do you got?
I want to talk about today in my R&R. It's kind of not all R&R because it is dealing with doing something with your clients, and it could be with team too. So
Okay.
I had a client that was in town. We've worked with this client for 22 years. So they've been a client for a very long time. But he was going to be in town, and I was like, hey, while you're in town, let me take you out to do an Amazon tour. You can actually go and tour the Amazon fulfillment centers. It was so amazing to see their robots, the Amazon robots in action and all that.
Okay.
But for
Okay.
that client, it was a cool thing because he's been sending products to Amazon for years now. But it's kind of like you just send a bunch of products and you really don't know what happens after that, right? And so
Sure.
for him to see that whole process of how they intake, how they take it apart and how they put it into their shelvings, then the little
Yeah.
robots will take them off and put them away somewhere else, and stuff. And then
Yeah.
how they pick the products, pack them, shipping, all of that, all
Okay.
the way to the truck. So it was amazing. You get to see the whole process. And that
Yeah.
was really a cool thing. So, to me, it is work slightly, but it's a more relaxed state, right, with your client, and you're sharing
Yeah.
something that's, one, just kind of cool. Robots are awesome to look at. And look, we even got a cute little mascot pin that they gave us.
That's pretty
Yes, so
cute.
they've been in business 4 years, this fulfillment center. That's
Okay.
he's their mascot, I forgot his name, but he's a hot air balloon pilot, an aeronaut is what they're called. And they're the aeronauts out there. And so it's just really cool because each of the fulfillment centers in the different areas can be, name themselves for their region and all of that. And so it's
Sure.
just a really cool thing. So it was cool to go and do something with the client. I mean, you could just take a client to dinner, you could take them axe throwing, you could do whatever. I know you do a
Yeah.
lot of like karaoke and dinners for your clients, which I think is
Yeah.
really cool. But that was just kind of something that still pertained to that client, but was interesting. And, we've in the past also taken a client one time to a metal fabrication because they had products and they were looking for a new vendor for some pieces. And so we took them to a plant that we had found that would let us tour it. And so I think doing those kind of things with your clients, it just makes it more interesting. And you could even do those things with your team members too, right? So as team building,
Yeah.
it would work for that too. So just thinking of things out of the box. What do
Yeah,
you
no,
have
I
for
dig it.
R&R this week?
Well, so what I've got is, we just got a new puppy just a couple of days ago.
I
And
know I've been
it's my
enjoying those videos.
first puppy. Oh, thank you so much. I've calmed down. I'm not filming every single moment of Zia's life, but for the first day, I definitely was. It's my first time having a puppy. Everybody warned us. Or warned me, they're like, oh, puppy, that's gonna be a headache. And I've got to say, oh my gosh, like she's such a gem. We rescued her she was in a foster care. The foster did an amazing job with her. Her temperament is so mellow. I know that we've totally lucked out here. I'm also still waiting for her to just like turn into a goblin or a gremlin at any moment. But oh my gosh, and the reason that I think this is such a good R&R thing is the wonderful thing about dogs is they don't give a shit about all the stuff going on in your business life. They're just happy as hell. And they just want to share that with you. And I think that that's infectious. I think it's so helpful. I mean, I know you've got a dog. No, it just, they wake up every morning and they're like, hey, you know what today is? It's the best day ever.
Yep.
That's great. Like I said, there are days where I need that. And it's really wonderful to have. With a puppy, I get to kind of train her as more of a blank slate. Our other rescues have been adult dogs and they've kind of come with their own little baggage. So
Yep.
I'm enjoying the puppiness of the puppy. And so, I know it's a big commitment. You're talking about 15, hopefully more years of commitment, but gosh, it's just so wonderful. So go get a puppy.
Well, I tell you, yes, my puppy, who's going to be turning 9 next month.
Yeah.
But like today, we were going to run out and grab some lunch, and she was like, "You're not going without me." So we're like, "Okay, dog friendly patio." So we had to take her to lunch with us because she was like, "Oh no, you've been on that computer all day. You're going to take me. I need something to do. I need you to take me." I was like, "Okay, great." So and one, by the way, there is science behind you live longer, up to 2 years longer, if you have pets. So there's just
Well, there you
something
go.
about it, as well as when you are petting your dogs, you're releasing oxytocin. So, I mean, it's a happy drug, right? So,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Great R&R. I love the client
Yeah.
field trip stuff. Take your clients on field trips and get them a puppy.
And get him a puppy too. I love it. All right. Till next time.
See ya.